been totally unwavering in this mission to avenge his wife's death and to defeat the Master. That's the only thing he's interested in. And as we saw on the clip there, with
well, he's obviously also interested in getting laid, which we didn't realize until now. Now so right.
Yeah, we live in hope, yes. Until
I smell spin-off.
well, I would say one. The relationship with Dutch is kind of it's the most unlikely rescue thing that she. After all this time, she's the one that gets him out of this situation, and because of the end of what happened at the end of season 3, we seem to have lost that relationship with Satraki and in fact the father-son thing, and this kind of replaces it for now. But we'll see how it transpires. But he's determined, almost to the point of selfishness, as we saw in that little clip where he begs Dutch to go back in the building to get the room out. And it's quite a ruthless thing to do, knowing what it may cost. And it seems to me his guilt when it all goes wrong and they both end up incarcerated, his guilt is palpable. So what I like about the bits we just seen, the first time I've seen it, is his vulnerability. He hasn't got all the answers. He's not the Lone Ranger, and it is left in a very with all this guilt for getting her into it, but he's still in there fighting, and as it transpires, it's Dutch that helps him, and he renews his vigour. And he gets back on track with his mission. And that's what I admire about the man. He's never wavering, even if it comes at the expense of other people.
Okay. Well, I think everybody that's trying to save the world, you know, they sometimes might just need somebody to talk to kind of just make sure their head's in check. Carlton, is there any thought about that, with the characters needing just a little professional help maybe to talk the stuff out?
Well, you know, not every scene that we think about in the writer's room actually makes it into the broadcast show. But so here's a scene that, you know, where some of the characters are dealing with some of the stresses in their lives that just for some reason or another didn't make it into the series. But we thought you guys all might enjoy seeing it here.
Mr. Eichhorst for a second, because Max is very much in the Master's favor right now. How does he feel about all that?
Yeah. Well, he considers himself, and by the way, it's explicit, the Master's special child ever since we've seen him. And to see someone upset, yes.
Is he still kind of tracking Satrakian and kind of just keeping an eye on where he is and what he's doing, because they have such a long history together?
Well, that's exactly the point. The story between both of them goes on, at least intimately. There is this thing, it goes a little bit in the backyard, just there is the outfall, the fallout, there is the nuclear bomb that exploded, and the vampires have taken over. So as long as Satrakian doesn't show up as a real threat, he's going to enjoy the brave new world he has created with the Master.
Am I the only one, though, that's hoping for an Eichhorst Satrakian reunion sometime in this season? Anyone else? Might we see you guys back together?
I think chances are high, but you never know,
Oh, we will. Let's just say it. We will. We'll see them together, for sure.
Also in this last season, you know, that's with the show ending, sometimes it's a time where you can let some characters go, and is everybody safe, or can we expect some scary ends for some of our characters?
No, nobody's safe. I mean, absolutely not. It was fun though, because obviously one of the great joys of making television is not only creating a group of characters, you know, on screen, but it's the kind of wonderful relationships that develop behind the scenes. And so it was sad that the show was ending, but it was also, I think, you know, fun for everybody to really see what the fate of their characters were. And you know, we get a really definitive ending for each character on the show, and certainly not everybody survives. I mean, it's not that kind of a show, and it would not be, in our view, sort of a fair ending if everybody was to make it. So, you know, I think the fun thing about the show is we really get to play out the end of that narrative, and I think there are some things that you guys will find really cool and surprising about how that goes down.
Okay. And Miguel Gomez couldn't be here with us today, but can you talk about Gus's journey? We couldn't see him in this episode and how he's kind of stepped up a little bit in his role, but can you talk about where he goes forward?
You know, Miguel is fantastic, and Gus is a sort of character. It's one of these sort of story issues that writers develop where it's been difficult to really get him in the mix with the core group. He seems to want to get with them and pull apart. So we really thought a lot about giving him, you know, more time, giving him his moment in the sun, because he's one of these people, like everyone else, but in his own way, kind of well equipped for the challenge, this unique challenge of fighting these Strigoi. So we really wanted to get him looped back in with some of the other.
I mean, we never had it. I mean, Corey, correct me, was this like the first time you had a scene with him, right?
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't until this season and well into the season that we actually meet.
Yeah.
And it's a sort of an interesting challenge because, you know, the audience knows the characters really well, but to me, he's just some new guy.
It was so strange because even, you know, as writers, we were like, I guess we weren't fully aware. It just seemed almost impossible that we could have these two characters coexisting for 4 seasons of the show and then realize, oh my gosh, they've actually never met face to face.
Yeah, there's one scene later in the season where we really have a heart to heart. We really have a moment to sort of share our stories of loss, and it's one of my favorite scenes I've shot in the whole series.
We talked a little bit about the romance of some of the characters. Max, I think Zach might be getting a little love interest. We see a little bit in the first episode. Can you talk about his romantic journey this season?
Yeah, well, basically at the start of season 4, Zach is living with the Master, and the Master kind of gives Zach everything that, you know, he needs and wants. But Zach he starts to feel lonely because he doesn't really have anyone. So then the Master gives Zach Abby, which is a servant girl, and you know, you can see it in the first episode. Zach I think he has a little crush. So you know, then he really wants to do anything to impress her.
And talk about your hair in the first couple episodes. You definitely kind of have that teenage mop happening.
Oh, yeah.
Talk about that a little bit. I assume, is it your hair?
It is. They wanted me to grow it out, you know, for this season, and you can kind of see the more rocker, kind of lonely style because I'm jumping on the couch with the air guitar. And, you know, I don't really care about how I look. So yeah, that was.
I just have to say I'm so glad to not be the person to be asked about their hair.
I stayed away from it.
Thank you.
Richard, is iCourse looking at Zach at all as somebody he can kind of mentor a little bit, or does he see him as an obstacle or a threat? How does he see him?
Oh, you know, I think iCourse is one of those guys who has always definite hope for a lot of stuff, and seeing that the Master is tutoring him, he's willing to step into that line and taking care of him in the place of the Master. There is this wish, that's for sure. You have seen that with Kelly, you know. The moment the Master decided Kelly would be a real Strigoi, a first-hand Strigoi, he takes care of her in place of the Master, and he becomes the big brother, or he becomes the kind of Strigoi gentleman for her. And in that way, you could say that there is this wish to be kind of a Strigoi stepfather for because this boy has potential, big potential for us.
And also, Jonathan Hyde's not here, but he is doing such a good job as the Master. But this is, you know, if you think about it, we've seen different actors playing the Master through the course of the series. Do you approach it differently with different actors playing them, kind of knowing what you're going to get from them, and knowing Jonathan's been on the show since the start as well?
Yeah, I mean, it was something that we discovered once, you know, we cast Jonathan. I think, you know, shows are really organic entities, and you sort of, the funnest part of the job is the creative collaboration with all the writers and all the actors. And so you write material, then you see what actors do with that material, you see the relationships that develop, and it became pretty clear early on that we thought that the Master's ultimate destination would be to jump into Palmer's body, and that Jonathan would be kind of a great culmination of his character to go from being this human villain to being this sort of ultimate supernatural villain in the show. And Jonathan embraced it, and I think it's just one of my favorite things about this final season is watching his performance unfold. And there was a day when I was on set and he was in full Master regalia, sitting at a table full of crew members, you know, just dressed as the Master, eating and carrying on. And it was like perfect off-screen, on-screen. He had embraced the part exactly as we hoped he would.
Would any of the actors here want a chance to play the Master? Because I wore this for what, about maybe 30 seconds, and it was a lot. But what would you guys think about kind of really going into that character and the makeup?
Immediately.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. Icor has wanted nothing more than to be the Master.
And we're not saying that none of us do become the Master.
That's right. I mean,
we're not saying they do, but we're not saying what they don't do. Right?
No, that's
anybody here could be the Master.
That could be a clue. Could not be a clue.
Jim, you were just the Master, weren't you? How did it feel?
Felt good.
Okay. I see you looking at me differently. Got my eye on you.
I also want to ask the actors if we can just go down the line. Just favorite moment from the show, just something that really comes to mind that you either love shooting or something that was great for your character. Corey, you want to start? Anything come to mind?
Well, I can't get too into it because it'd be the biggest spoiler in the world. But I think the last episode and the events of the last episode were, I thought, so well done. I think for people who've read the books and know how it ends, and for people who are just coming into the show, I think they did a great job of keeping it true to the spirit of the conclusion of the books without the exact same things happening, and I was really pleased.
David, how about you? Anything come to mind?
Yeah, well, I go along with that, but the very last scenes of the whole thing had a new kind of depth and structure that we hadn't seen before. But if you mean for the show as a whole, I thought the gas station scene early on in the series, because we were all in it. We just met Dutch, and so it was just a great week knowing we were part of a really spectacular scene. And we were out on the street, and people who lived in the street had to be relocated to a hotel because there were so many guns going off and trucks being blown up, and we were trapped inside the gas station. And there was lots of little dynamics going on, and because we were all in it together, I remember that was a lot of fun.
Kevin, how about you?
It was pretty tough for me to bring it down to one specific scene. I think it's for me the greatest thing is just having the luxury of being able to tell the entire story with such an incredible group of talented and compassionate, generous artists, and to get to give you guys the whole journey. I can't wait for you guys to see the last season. It's pretty exciting. That's kind of a cop-out answer, but that's how I feel. If I was to pick one scene that really stood out to me, it was when the professor and Fett really get down to it and talk about, Fett just says, break it down for me, what do I have to do, what do I have to know? And that to me was kind of like, which was also at the gas station, that was kind of like a magic moment for me because it really set things on a course for Fett for the bromance. And, yeah.
That's great. Ruta, do you have one?
David stole my answer. It was the gas station as well, because it was one of the first scenes the first episodes that I did, and we shot the whole thing chronologically as much as we could as well. So it was a little bit more theatrical, and as David said, the little nuances between characters started to form, and it was just so lovely spending so much time with those people. And then there's a scene in this final season where a group of us are back together. It's a very emotional scene, and it's kind of it's nice to have those two as favourites, because you have the sort of joy of everyone meeting, and then you have this very emotional scene near the end of the show as well, which is very exciting.
We're going to get to Richard in a second. You guys, we're going to have some audience questions here, so if you want to start lining up, we'll get to those in just a few minutes. Richard, do you have a favorite moment?
Well, I have two favorite impressions. The first thing that smashed my mind was how incredibly courageous and capable the writers and Carlton were to get away from the books, because when I read the books, this kept the creation and the excitement very high. And in terms of real scenes, I guess for me it's the first scene I shot with Straken is also the first day I met David, and it was the prison scene. I think it was episode 2, and there was nothing else than sitting one in front of another and separated by a window, and so it was all just watching and talking through the eyes of the other. It was actually very intense, and so this would be the first scene I have done as a Straken Eichhorst confrontation, and then definitely the last confrontation, which you haven't seen yet. So this is a nice arc for me to tell the story.
Max, what about you? Do you have a favorite moment?
Well, I think Zach has really kind of been to a lot of places and throughout all the groups. So it's kind of hard for me to really pick one moment. But I mean, I really like it when you get to bond with a specific person in a scene. And I think it's really cool when, maybe like you're on, your character's on a different track, or you don't agree with someone, but then you can have that scene that kind of slows it down. It's kind of a happy scene. So I think, it's kind of hard to pick, but there's a lot of different scenes I like.
That's great. Audience questions? Let's see if anybody has questions for our group.
Hi, my name is Robert. My question is for the writing portion, because we've seen Strigoi have a plan
where he could turn even on the master if he considers that the master is not faithful to the dogma he established. So there is for sure something really interesting that's developed in the last season, where Eichhorst is not openly questioning the master, but let's say where frictions are developed between the master and Eichhorst. That's for sure.
Thank you. Next question.
Hello, my name is Joshua, and I have a question for Max. So, Max, what was your audition for this string like?
Let's see. My first audition, I'm pretty sure, I think Carlton was there, and the audition process was pretty cool. They just kind of let me take my time with the audition and, do what I wanted to do. And I think that's really cool about the audition and kind of on set, because they let you really do whatever you want to do to, make the character real.
Next question.
Hi, my name is Kylie. Do you ever get scared of the vampires on set?
Kevin, you should explain what you do on set in terms of scaring people.
I think people are probably more afraid of me on set, to tell you the truth. Well, here's one example. We were shooting at this one place called the Hearn, which is already kind of reportedly a haunted place to be shooting anyways. And I was telling, I love Miguel, but I was, this is funny. I was telling Miguel about these wolves that lived on the outskirts of the building. They were like wolf-coyote hybrids, and they were way more vicious and smarter than the wolves or the coyotes on their own, so that he should be very careful. And then he went to the bathroom, and I waited for him. And then I started videotaping on my camera, and I followed him, and I snuck up behind him, and I said, so the fear was more, what is Kevin going to be up to? The vampires on set, they have this really amazing textured, almost kind of beautiful makeup done to them. I know they're horrific, but you can't help but admire the work that's put into them. But when you're sitting down and having lunch with them and talking about normal familial stuff, they stop being as scary as maybe they are to you.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, my name is Alex, and well, my question is, what is like the most interesting decisions they had to make for the adaptations, the things they had to left out from the books and what they had to add to the show?
Well, so Chuck and Guillermo wrote the books, and really from very early on, you know, once you make a television show, again, as I was saying before, it's kind of this organic entity, and you start to see these characters come to life, and you see what storylines work, and you kind of see what relationships develop, and then that feedback informs how we continue to write the show. So with Chuck and Guillermo collaborating, myself along with the other writers, we followed those sort of things in the show that we thought were exciting and had great potential and interested us as writers. So we viewed the television show as its own entity. We never thought our obligation was to follow the books closely. The books became kind of just a reference and sort of pointed out certain landmarks we might want to go visit, but we gave ourselves a lot of latitude to just discover what the story should be as we talked about it in the writer's room.
I would say specifically there's one character who's not in the books at all, who's up on stage, and that's Dutch. I mean, Ruta, bringing her character in, really energized the show. She's been great for us, and that's an easy example of something that we just felt that there were a number of different reasons, but it was great to introduce a new character to that world and watch what happened.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I don't know what the strain would look like without Dutch, without Ruta, right? We have time for a few more questions, guys. If you want to step up to the microphone, I want to know. Also final season is a good time to maybe see some past characters again, if at all possible, in this world. Might we see anybody we haven't seen in a while come back up?
Well, we already saw in episode in 401, we saw Zach's mom came back in sort of a pseudo flashback. I don't want to give too much, but no, I mean, the last thing we wanted to do was sort of take a trip down memory lane. We love doing flashbacks on the show. It's one of them. They're so much fun to write, and they're so much fun to watch. But we want to make sure that it's informing the action and the characters and kicking everything forward. So nothing springs to mind.
I mean, we introduced some new characters this season that I think are great, and they kind of help inform the journey of our existing characters, and I think you'll really enjoy their stories as the season goes forward.
Okay. And I've talked to Corey about this, but the writers, there's a luxury in knowing the end is coming. Is there a luxury for the actor knowing the show is coming to an end and your character is going to come to a conclusion as opposed to not knowing, you know, if it would live year after year. Does anybody have any perspective on that? Just, is there a luxury as an actor?
It's just really nice to tell a story from beginning to end, because sometimes shows can go on and then get cancelled mid-season, or you don't know when they're going, so you're developing a character and you're not knowing where you're taking it to. So to know that you all have a conclusion, it's really nice to build to that point and to know that you've kind of finished your work. And I think that's what was brilliant about having just 4 seasons on the show, is that it's a complete story. And you can go back and you can watch them again and see different bits that were planted early on that sort of come to fruition later on. And for me, that was just a really nice thing to tie at the end and see the journey from Dutch right at the beginning when she was kind of a bit of a spoiled idiot and ends up being, hopefully redeeming herself somewhere.
Did that affect anybody else in just approaching this last season?
Well, I think there's no reason to hold anything back. You know, I think when you have a character who you know has to live indefinitely, you can go on for 10 seasons. You hold back on the throttle a little bit because you don't want to have to top yourself later. And knowing that okay, now we've got 8 episodes left, now we've got 7 episodes left. You know, it gives you license to let the stakes be really high. And in a show like this, where the subject matter is about the survival of the human race, the stakes should be high.
Okay, well, you guys can watch the rest of the final season of The Strain every Sunday night on FX. Thanks for being here. Thanks, everyone.